Okay, so I have been raising a few questions about NHS England because they have made a decision, they've reached a decision about closing down, removing homeopathy and most complementary therapies from every hospital, every NHS facility in hospitals in the UK. And this started, there was a lobby in 2012 by homeopaths and complementary and alternative medicine therapists. And they lobbied because there was targeting against homeopaths and alternative medicine, the various therapies, including vitamin therapy, which was highly important. And they wanted to close it out from the UK to make it totally unavailable, including the closing down of hospitals. So what happened was a charity was set up it was based in homeopathy, and there was a lobby. That lobby was really well attended in London in 2012, and I was there. I was one of them. I found this really interesting, some of the answers that came out. So if I just pause this for a moment, I found it really interesting because the Nightingale collaboration, there were groups that fraudulently misrepresented homeopathy and homeopaths. They targeted individual homeopaths and they fraudulently made references against them, saying that homeopathy was not, it was just a placebo, there was no science in it, and including all of the other therapies. And now there's the ASA, Advertising Standards Authority, and various other organisations that are all linked in with the government and Big Pharma. So they're all in it together, really. Even though they claim they're not, they're all in it together. And the MHRA, which regulates vaccines and medicines, even complementary ones. So there was a lobby to kind of iron all of this out and get to the bottom of it, and individuals spoke up. I was one of them. And what happened was, they heard individual cases and evidence was presented, and what came out of it was a white paper called No Decision About Me Without Me. That was 2012, and I think that white paper was produced in December 2012, which was a very significant date in the Mayan calendar. It was, and anyway, so they had been targeting this alternative medicine for years before that, but particularly around 2010. And they kind of had done their vaccine research by then. There was a huge vaccine experiment going on in China, and I had one of their vaccines in 2002, and then I was a vaccine fatality in 2005. My artery exploded and I lost a claim, according to the record, I lost 6 litres of blood. There was 3 litres found in my abdomen, and then I lost a further 3, according to the record. And so I was lucky to be alive, and they said no one's ever survived that before. And I know what happened after the vaccine. I immediately reacted, and it was horrific, my reaction. And then I was never the same again, and I kind of got like a fibromyalgia, ME, and I just wasn't myself. I became very subordinate, subservient and quiet. And then 2005, in the summertime, when you wouldn't expect it, I just suddenly collapsed one night. Suddenly collapsed, and then I was nearly dead. No warning. I was otherwise healthy. They couldn't understand it. And then I did some research recently that said that children in China have had the exact same symptoms, the exact outcome happened to them: abdominal artery ruptures. And you have to say, yes, they're vaccine related because they have all the vaccines. My vaccine was Chinese. So As an advocate for alternative medicine, and obviously I am scientific proof that it works because I'm still here. You know, I'm alive, and at the end of the day, I have been through one hell of a life experience. I've been through so much, and I am able to speak, communicate, and, you know, not all the time. And I'm able to kind of get up in the day and function, which for most people, they wouldn't have survived that. You know, they would not have survived. They wouldn't be able to function. I don't take conventional medication, you know, antidepressants or anything, because I don't feel I need to. I don't want to run that risk. And why should I? Why should I have to take a drug that might cause other things because the Conservatives and fraud has done this to me? Coercive control, ring fencing. Why should I have to take something? That's codependency. Why should I have to take their medicine, which I can't then control? You know, you'd need to have somebody observing you, monitoring you. Why should I take that when I am alternative? And it's because I'm alternative that I was persecuted by them and ring fenced in the first place. So why should I then not be myself? Because they persecuted me for being myself. Why should I then collude with it and take their drugs? That would be another victory for them. I'm not going to do that. So it's come about that the 2012 victory has yielded in this search that there was suppression of information. They got a result, the lobby, that overturned that these fraudulent publications that stated that there was no scientific proof that homeopathy or other alternative medicine was effective. That was then suppressed, but it was supposed to be removed. And it's been found that it was only temporarily suppressed. So the AI have said it wasn't a victory, it was a temporary victory. But extensive evidence was heard at that lobby, and I was one of the speakers about MMR damage and my experience with homeopathy. I listened to others as well. And then the white paper was written. So I was then wondering, was this COVID agenda? Because it's very, very obvious that this process began in the run-up to the COVID. And by 2018, all of these NHS alternative medicine hospitals were closed down. You cannot get homeopathy on the NHS. And I was asking how the NHS England arrived at their decision, because the decision was made in the High Court. But the High Court was not a hearing, it was a judicial review. So it gives the appearance, the impression that the High Court was involved in that decision. But it actually wasn't. It was just a review. They heard no evidence, no individual cases. They just basically stamped their approval on it. And so the NHS England do not hear individual cases. They are a government body that assess themselves. It's self-assessing. They have their own NHS medical experts to make these decisions that are mainstream and big pharma funded and led. So at no time was any holistic or independent review or judge or jury involved in the NHS England decision. At any time when they decided to shut down an entire branch of medicine from the entire UK population, just before COVID, they achieved that. So by 2019, there was no more access to homeopathy and most alternative practices on the NHS. And then we had COVID. where they introduced the bioweapon, the COVID vaccine, which has been known to harm quite a few people. And it was used for coercive control, people being locked down, backed into a corner in prison as a hostage, and they weren't allowed to continue their life until they had it in many cases. And, you know, after what happened to me with my own vaccine damage, you wouldn't want to take a vaccine again. I certainly am not having a vaccine again after what happened to me. And so you've got to kind of accept there is some agenda going on here. It kind of all the dots join and the path is very clear. It wasn't like 5 years after the closure, before the bioweapon came in, before the vaccines were introduced, before COVID happened. It was literally a domino effect. It was a cascade. The white paper was won and achieved by the lobby. No decision about me without me to defend patient rights in holistic practices available in the UK. And as soon as that was achieved, the NHS England, which is largely conservatives, is a conservative body of NHS mainstream orthodox big pharma based medicine, political MPs, council leaders, they basically got together and decided, without any independent review or individual case assessments, without involving any homeopaths or any alternative complementary therapists or any holistic juries or judges, they made a decision to close it out, shut it down from the whole of the UK population. And then they systematically closed them all down just before COVID struck and introduced their bioweapon. Now that's got to really tell you something, doesn't it? All that hard work that we as homeopaths and patients did in London in 2012, in July, it was the 4th of July 2012, and some of those speakers, including myself, were mothers of children damaged by autism. Now, in my own questions, I never made the link between MMR and autism. I simply said MMR damage to my child. 2004. And so AI came back with, there's no proven scientific link between MMR and autism. I didn't mention the word autism. So it's clear that there is an understanding, and they put words into your mouth, even AI. Even YouTube and Google have some political bias and kind of contracted investment with Big Pharma. So they are biased. But it's taken a while to get the answers, and we've had to go round the houses